the oldest brother of UNIT.City and the CEO of UNIT.City, Dominique Piote. He is a hero from my point of view because he started his life and career in France. He worked for a big bank for BNP Paribas. And directly working with CEO, reporting. Then he moved directly to Silicon Valley after the crisis. After it was 2004. And he started his career in Silicon Valley. Finally he built a company. He sold it to a big concern. He worked with the top 500 Fortune companies. And then he accepted the proposal and moved to Kyiv to develop this project in Kyiv. So please welcome Dominique.
Thank you. Спасибо.
We will have now a small interview, and I want to ask several questions that I prepared because I think you have huge experience, and this is very interesting for us to know how you reached it and what is your mission, we can say. And I will start with the first question, if you don't mind. And for me, I think you've been asked this question many times, but for me, it's very interesting. Why did you decide to move to Ukraine? And how you will describe the living in Ukraine, because you're already 1 year here?
Thank you. Well, first, sorry, I don't speak Russian or Ukrainian yet. But I will. But I'm learning. But it's hard. It's really hard. I moved to Silicon Valley in 2004. I'm French and American, and I created my company. And it's something people. How many of you have been to San Francisco or to Silicon Valley? Okay, only 1, 2, 2, 3. Well, when the border reopened, and if you can get the visa, I'm sorry, we don't have the best president right now. For visa is not so cool. But if you can, you should go. I mean, it's a very interesting place when you work in IT. So I moved to Silicon Valley in 2004. I remember I arrived at the end of August 2004, and I don't know if you remember, but August 2004 is a very important moment in history of Silicon Valley. It's when Google went public, did its IPO. And it really is the end of the tech bubble. So it's the end of a really, really, probably one of the biggest crises of the tech industry and of Silicon Valley. People lost their job, and the weird thing in Silicon Valley, it's because we do only tech. When tech is good, like everybody's happy and everything works. When tech is bad, it's really bad. It's really, really bad. So when I arrived, I felt that crazy cool energy of people creating companies, of people having ideas, of young entrepreneurs, of young developers. And Google was only 3,000 people at the time. It was still a small company. Facebook didn't exist. Twitter didn't exist. Apple and Oracle were probably the biggest companies at the time. And of course, HP, UNIT.Packard, which is kind of the mother of all the companies in Silicon Valley. But that was it. It was not that big place with big giant that we know today yet. And so I felt that energy, that crazy thing. And then Facebook arrived, and then I created my company, and then I sold my company. And then all of a sudden, it was not that much fun anymore. Those small startup were big startup, were not startup anymore, were big corporate company. My friends who are working for Facebook and Google, they don't consider working in a startup anymore. It's really a regular corporate job. The campus is cool, the product is cool, but then you have a badge, you're a number in a big company, and you have policies, and you have rules, and you have. It's not for me. That for sure. So I was like, okay, what's next? And I really wanted a new challenge. I never thought of Ukraine. right? Never. I have Ukrainian friends in Silicon Valley because there's a lot of amazing developers. I mean, you guys are amazing developers, and some of you decide to move. And we will talk about this because our mission is to keep you here. This is why we're building all this. But then I realized, okay, I want a new challenge, and then I received, I was contacted by the UNIT.City team in Kiev and say, oh, we're doing this amazing thing in Kiev. It's kind of a mini Silicon Valley, but on steroid. It's going to be really cool. And Kiev is cool. I was like, no, come on, guys. No, it's not cool. I don't want to go. But then I looked, and then I flew in Kiev, and I found the same energy I found in 2004 when I moved to Silicon Valley, and I think it's really important that we realize this. I think it's a great time in Ukraine to create a company or to work in the IT sector. It's really felt 2004 Silicon Valley. I see a lot of startups again, a lot of young companies, a lot of cool ideas and bad ideas, more bad ideas than good ideas, which is what you want, which is what you need to create that really cool ecosystem. So, long story short, I'm young again, and
you're lucky.
I love it, and honestly, I mean, I'm just discovering Kharkiv, but it's my second time here. But it's cool. I mean, the quality of life is amazing, and yeah, I love it.
But as you see, and as we know, so now IT sector is growing in Ukraine.
Yep.
So the statistics say so it's approximately 20% a year. But we see that now we see a lot of outsourcing companies.
Yes.
And the problem is that there are no startups and no product companies, so it's less than 10%, I think, by the statistic. How do you think why it's so, and how the UNIT.City can change this?
I always try to understand how do you create an ecosystem, an entrepreneurial ecosystem, an ecosystem that supports the creation of companies. And you really need three things. You need talent. And we have that. The thing we have to realize is if you don't have talent, this is one of the things that is the hardest to get. Take years to create the universities, to create the program, and we're super lucky in Ukraine because we have that infrastructure. So you need talent. We have that. The second thing you need is funding. You need money. And by funding, I mean VC money. I don't mean the money of Ukrosi Bank and who is going to give you a loan. No, that's not that money I'm talking about. I'm talking about people who are willing to take big risk, to bet big money, and who are ready to lose that money because they need to invest in 25 startups, and 2 of those startups are going to make it, and they're going to pay for the 25 and hopefully a little bit more. So you need VC money, you need venture capital money. It's really hard to get, but you need that. And then you need a third thing that is more a question of a mindset. Personally, I call that the rebel mindset, because I like rebellion. I'm not too much a revolution guy. I'm more a rebellion guy. It's like I like chaos, but with a little bit of order. But I'm serious because when you create Uber, you're entering a market that is a very mature market. There's tons of taxi companies everywhere. So you have to be rebellious to say, okay, I'm going to disrupt this business, and I'm going to disrupt it massively. If you don't have that rebel spirit, then it's not going to work. And if you don't have it, you're not going to have that entrepreneurial mindset. So I think you guys in Ukraine, you're pretty good with the rebellious thing. I mean, you like going in the street, fighting, changing, and it's cool. I love it. So I think this we have. So the thing we don't have is VC money. It's the easiest thing to get. because you just have to convince people to come and invest. Now you have to make sure that the ecosystem and the risk around it, rule of law and all that stuff works, but working on it, and then we're going to have it. So we need to bring VC money, and I think that's really what's missing, and I think that's really something we're trying to do in UNIT.City, and we're bringing more. But once you have those three things, we should be good to go.
Yeah. So you need to start at least, and then it will grow.
Yeah,
100%. And but Dominique, you always say about ecosystem. I think if we ask now, does anybody understand this word ecosystem? Pay attention and unity.
And do you know what was the thing there was in Silicon Valley? Sorry? Weather. That's a good point. No, there was Stanford. There was a university, and there was one of the best engineering university in the country, created by Leland Stanford, who made his money by creating the train during the gold rush, and then he arrived in San Francisco, developed San Francisco, and then said, okay, what do I do with my money now? And he lost his son very early, and his wife told him, well, with all your money, you're going to create a university to educate all those kids. And so, but you have to imagine the Silicon Valley at that time, it's nothing, it's empty. So he creates what is now the best university in the world, in the nicest campus possible, in the middle of nowhere. And because he's an engineer himself, he says, I'm going to do an engineering university, and because I'm extremely rich, I'm going to do the best one in the world. And then the way it worked for many, many years, students would go to Stanford, and then they would move back to the East Coast, and they would work for IBM. And then until Hewlett and Packard went to Stanford and decided to stay and to create HP. And then so everything starts by a pool of talent, and every ecosystem starts there. And there's those talents, because they're extremely smart, that decide to create companies. And then and this is kind of what you need. And because those companies become being successful, you start having some venture capital will arrive, and people invest. And because you have a specific culture, you create that crazy ecosystem that makes this thing work together. And this specific culture for Silicon Valley is very well known and very well studied. It's the 70s, and it's the hippies. And Silicon Valley would not be Silicon Valley without the hippies from the 70s, who were here to break codes, to break rules, to create to create really a counterculture. And that brings us back to my rebellious mind spirit. People forget, but it's actually crazy when you think about Steve Jobs. I mean, the guy was really a hippie. He was taking LSD. He was doing yoga sessions. He was not wearing shoes. I mean, the guy was a typical example of a hippie who wanted to break everything and who considered that rules were for other people, not for him. And if we don't have that spirit, we're not going to create great companies. We're going to duplicate. And so that's why you need that ecosystem that allow for those very specific, unique type of people to survive and to thrive. Because you put Steve Jobs in New York in the 70s and you have nothing. You don't have Apple. It's impossible. And I think that's also something we're trying to create, and we're not trying to duplicate. And it's very important, because there's also one thing that we have to understand is you cannot duplicate an ecosystem. You can be inspired by it. You can understand the elements you need in an ecosystem, but you cannot duplicate it. So we have to create our own thing based on our own culture, on our own time, but it's key. It's absolutely key, because once again, if you don't have that support system for those, I'm going to call them misfits, those different people to become successful, then it's not going to work. And if we take an analogy, we can talk about Hollywood. I mean, Hollywood in Los Angeles is the place for movies. But at the time when Hollywood started, movies were not made in Los Angeles. Movies were made actually in New York. And you know why actually Los Angeles became the Mecca? Because there was a cartel in New York of 3 companies who owned the movie industry, and you had to work with those 3 companies, or you had to pay license fees that were crazy high. Some people said, you know what, I'm going to move at the other side of the country, and we're going to completely break those rules, and we're going to make movies without paying those clowns in New York. And this is how Hollywood started. And so, see, this is kind of always the same story. You need to find a place, and usually it's a little bit far. This is kind of one of the things I like with Ukraine. It's we're a little bit protected in a way because we're far from the others, so we can do our own things. One of the things I heard when I moved here is, you know what's cool about Ukraine is you can test a lot of things because we have rules, but we don't. And so you can try a lot of things. And for example, we want UNIT.City to be a smart city. Nobody really knows what is a smart city, so it's okay. So I'm like, okay, what is a smart city? Oh, a smart city is a place where you collect a lot of data and to see what people do, and then you build great technologies that is useful for people based on those data. Well, okay, collect a lot of data. I see a few issues here. And if I was in the US or in Canada, collect a lot of data that I would, or in Europe, in France, I would have some issues. But here, it's like, no, let's do it. We'll see. We'll figure it out. And I know we're going to invent new stuff thanks to that. And that's how we're going to create a smart city that is completely unique. And that's fun.
But for me, you talked about Facebook, about Google, and for me, it's a very strange thing because I know that Anton, be patient. Everything is okay.
Don't break anything.
I know that a lot of Ukrainian outsourcing companies already working with Facebook, with Microsoft, yes, with Google, but still this company do not open office in Ukraine. Why do you think so? Why Facebook doesn't come to Ukraine to open their office? Why Facebook? Because I was even in Romania last year and they have all the offices of Microsoft, Facebook. Why they do not come to Ukraine?
Why don't you go get them? I'm going to tell you how, no, but I'm serious. I'm going to tell you how Facebook decided to open an office in Paris because I helped. So I know how it worked. Facebook is growing and Facebook is facing one problem as what's next for them. And what's next for them is clearly around artificial intelligence and machine learning. And they're investing billions in those. And they start looking at, okay, where are the talents? It happens that France is really good in that. We have École Polytechnique, we have extremely good engineering school, and the best, including the guy who is leading artificial intelligence for Facebook, who is in Silicon Valley, is French. And then the French community in Silicon Valley, we said, well, why don't we invite the French president? Why don't we invite him and organize meeting with Zuckerberg, and why don't we give them some incentive to come to France? And so the French president, François Hollande, flies to Silicon Valley. We organize a lot of meeting. I have a few fun stories. His English is not so good. Like its English is really bad. And he meets with Elon Musk and he said, "Ooh, I know you. You are the rocket guy." And Elon Musk is like, "Yeah, I'm building cars too in Silicon Valley. And, Tesla. You're the rocket guy." Anyway, but we created those links, and then we created all those incentive for Facebook to create an amazing R&D lab in one of the most expensive city in the world, Paris. And so now Facebook has 300 people coming from all over the world. We even created special visa for those people so they could come and work in France in one of the most expensive city in the world. So it's not cheap. And so you need to sell Ukraine. if we don't go there, if we don't sell the country, people are not going to come. They're just not. They hear that we have great talent, that we do great outsourcing, which is true, and they're like, that's good enough for me. Why would I do more? Nobody comes to me to explain to me why you're such a good place for an ecosystem. And so why would I go? I mean, they will have the same reaction. Everybody has the same reaction I have. Why would I go?
Will you do it for Ukraine?
But we're doing it for Ukraine.
Yeah.
UNIT.City, we're supporting Tech Ukraine. So we are really supporting this a lot. I think it's absolutely key. I would not only do it for Ukraine, I would do it for UNIT.City, because I want those people to come to UNIT.City. So I'm going to be super selfish on this one, and I will take whoever wants to come with me, and we're going to go and we're going to get them. Unfortunately, we can't travel easily, but I think that's the only way. We have to sell our country. We have to tell our story. If you don't tell your story, somebody else is telling it for you. And you know who's telling it for you? It's Russia, probably. Or it's people who have really good interest and who are really good at telling story, or are manipulating election, no comment. And they're really good at that stuff. So there you go. So people think, oh, Ukraine, there's war. There's corruption, and then it's not completely safe. Well, I live in Ukraine. I haven't seen war. I haven't seen corruption. I haven't been, and so it exists, but it's not the truth of our business. I was talking to. Do you know Decathlon? No, you don't know Decathlon. It's not yet in Kharkiv.
Decathlon?
Decathlon.
Yeah, it's a very famous sport shop.
Very famous sport shop. They have 2 stores in Kyiv.
In Kyiv,
and they're just opening. And I talked to the CEO of Decathlon, and I said, "What was your fear?" I was like, my fear was corruption, was custom. I felt like I'm going to have to pay for the custom. And he said, in 2 years, it never happened to me.
No.
So he said, that's what people say, and there's a reality. And once again, if we don't tell the story, people are going to buy the story from other people who have a better interest to attract investment and talent. I mean, it's a competition here. So we have to be better at that.
Yeah, I think you are totally correct. If you manage at least to ask Facebook to join UNIT.City Kyiv, I think country will win from this.
Okay.
Yeah, but
who wants to come with me? I don't want to go alone.
How do you see the IT entrepreneur in the future? What skills will be needed?
We need to work on soft skills. I mean, I think, and I see that in every startup. Marketing skills, sales skills is really something we need to develop. So we created the UNIT School of Business in Kyiv to start working on that. It's not going to be enough, but it's already something. We have 8 accelerators in UNIT.City in Kyiv. Because we want people who have a business idea to come and to learn. You know, and I really believe this, marketing and sales is way more easier than IT, than the technical skills. It's way more easier. So if it's impossible for someone who's in marketing to move to IT, but I don't believe the reverse is true. I think it's really possible for someone who is a really good engineer, a really good developer, to become a really good manager. I think the management skills is really something we have to work on. But it will happen.
Yeah, I think it's a big lack now of managers, of good managers, sales people, marketing people. It's very hard to find them on the market even.
Yeah.
Because there are no good, educational courses. There are not so many business schools even, because in Kharkiv there are 2 maybe only business schools, but they're not teaching you IT with the direction of IT, you know. So it's general MBA, and that's all. That's what we have.
You know, I always, when I look at Facebook, for example, it's a company I know fairly well because I lost a lot of my friends who went working there. Well, they're still friends. I didn't lost them. But they're what we call product managers. Well, a product manager is not someone who necessarily understands or is a developer or is a tech guy, someone who understands tech, but who's not necessarily a tech person, but is someone who knows how to create a product. And one of my good friends, her name is Fiji Simo. She's now she has a very big role now in Facebook, and she started with creating. And she's from the best business school in France. She has no IT background, and she's the number 4 of Facebook now. She's leading everything that is on mobile. So basically 85% of Facebook. But she started as creating the video as a product on Facebook. And at the beginning, there was no video on Facebook. It was not for video. It was to exchange pictures. And anyway, when Facebook started on mobile, you didn't have enough bandwidth to have good quality video, so it was not even an option. But she created that product, and she really understood. Okay, I have to be user centric. I have to understand what the people want. I have to know the length, etc. And so it really, you need to have that mindset. I think. If we had product manager, if I could do a training right now and build a training, I would create a training around product manager and create product manager because I think it's a key element.
Yeah, I agree. Totally agree. And if you start your career now, would you go to work on a startup or an IT company, to a big IT company?
Okay, the thing is, okay. So when I started my career a long time ago, because I'm more than 50, so I'm older. When I started my career, there was no choice. I went to one of the equivalent of Harvard in France, so a good school, one of the best school in France, and there was only 3 options. Even though I was passionate about tech, and I was not an engineer, but I was passionate, I could work for government, I could go into banking or in consulting. I decided not to go to government, but I did consulting and banking. But going to a startup was not an option. Today in France, all the cool kids, they do startups. And it's kind of the reverse thing is I'm not sure it's good either. It's what is their really passion? What is their drive? It's just do it because it's cool and because it's in France today. It's easy to raise money, but you have all those shitty, bad startups that are going to die, so I don't know. If I was to start my career, I think I will still work for a company for a while to try to discover what I want, what I need, and then get to know myself a little bit better. There is one thing there is one value I have is I don't like having a boss. I mean, when I say I don't like is I hate having a boss. I'm lucky enough, my boss, which is your boss as well, is a really smart guy and is well, you're lucky because he's in Kyiv. I'm less lucky because he's in the cell building as me. But he understands that he has to give us freedom. He has to give us, okay, this is a mission, this is what I want, this is my vision, help me execute. But he's not on my face every day, and he's more here to support and help and answer questions and that. But anyway, I hate having a boss. So I would create a company no matter what. I would be an entrepreneur because this is who I am. This is in my blood, and this is what I will do again. But I don't think it's for everyone. Freedom is scary. Creating a company is extremely scary, and you have if you're not successful, you don't know how to pay the bill. If you're successful, you have to pay tons of bills, and if you're very successful, you're running after the money to pay the bill that are becoming more and more. It's honestly, it's so we didn't do anything. So one of the big trend is the world as we know it is going to be different. But I think data and data analytics, we've seen nothing with what we can do with data, and we've seen nothing yet with machine learning, AI, and all that stuff. And it's still going to be huge. But I hope we're going to start using it for useful stuff. Obviously, healthcare is something that is going to be booming. We have to understand today that the medication we're using is kind of the equivalent of a nuclear bomb. Like you're taking a pill to take care of something, and in fact, you're taking care of tons of things that don't need to be fixed. And so we can really do a lot in healthcare, and Silicon Valley is working a lot in that, whether it's micro robots that are pills that you ingest that will do their thing to fix what needs to be fixed, heart surgery, all that stuff that we could do with those micro robots pretty easily, or what Elon Musk is actually working on, and many other people, implants, brain implants, and all that stuff. I mean, fairly soon. And I know it's scary, but everybody who's smart in Silicon Valley is working on this and investing in this. We are going to merge with machines. You're not going to end your life being just your pure body. You're going to end your life having some robots in you taking care of business because nature is not good. I'm not saying it's good or bad. I'm saying that's what's going on. And so we will see that from Silicon Valley like a lot, those things. And then, of course, the future of work. And anything that is related to the future of work. I had a conversation a long time ago with a very famous VC who said, I don't understand why people still have to be in Silicon Valley. With all the technology we have, why do we have to be in Silicon Valley where it's expensive? We should be able to work anywhere in the world, and that should not matter. Well, the reality is it doesn't work, and we all know it. To create, we need to put 70 people in a room and to fight, to have ideas, to collaborate, to invent, to etc. So we need that. So how can the technology help us working on the future of work? And nobody really knows. I mean, don't you feel like it's crazy that the best thing we have today is Zoom,
yeah.
which is honestly a super shitty technology. And it's Zoom. I can't stand Zoom. And we had Skype before. I mean, and do you seriously, do you feel that Zoom is way better than Skype? It's the same shit, but it's the same shit like 20 years, 15 years before, later. They've not reinvented anything. It's just a different name. It does exactly the same thing. And then you have Meets, and then you have, and so where is the next technology for that? When?
Somebody in UNIT.City will develop it.
Yeah, guys, you're on a mission.
Yeah, and last question from my side. You now speak a lot with IT companies, with IT owners, and what do you recommend to change to grow quickly? What are the bad sides of our companies and attitude to business maybe, and what do you recommend to change to grow quickly?
I would do two things. I think, and I don't want to offend anybody because we have the same problem in France. It says there is no local market.
Yeah.
And if you think there will be a local market, you're wrong. There will never be a local market because just even that notion of local market doesn't exist. There is no local market in Silicon Valley, by the way. Silicon Valley is only 4 million people. 4 million people. That's it. San Francisco is 800,000 people. It's a very small city, smaller than Kharkiv. So the notion of we need to find a local market is a stupid notion that doesn't exist. So we need companies who think global from day one. So when you're an Israeli company, you know that your market is going to be super small. So you think global from day one. The problem is to think global. First, you need to speak the global language, which is unfortunately English. But it's very basic, right? You need to speak Chinese if you think the global market for you is China, which is also an option. But see, we are in a very divided world. There's two worlds. In our tech life, there's two worlds. Either you're Chinese or you're not. And if you're Chinese, you have your own stuff. So you don't have Google, you don't have Facebook, you have your own equivalent. You don't have Amazon, you don't have eBay, you don't have Twitter. You have none of that. You have equivalents or better. I had an office in Shanghai and in Singapore, so I know very well. And then you have the rest of the world, and then you have contact. So you have small pocket of stuff that are trying to survive. But anyway, basically you have two words. But that's it. There's no local. It's just global. So you have to think global. You have to build global. And when you start building your company and your IT company, if you don't think global, you're dead. But you're dead. It's okay to have a small company. Not everybody needs to be Facebook. It's really okay to have a small company. I'm not trying to say everybody should be but if you don't think global, it's gonna be super tough. And I think this is the second thing is you need money. You need money. You need money to expand. You need money to scale. You need more money to scale and to expand. We're very lucky in Ukraine because cost of life is lower. We have a great competitive advantage, which means that with less money, you can do bigger things. You need less money to do the same thing that any Silicon Valley company would need. So if you think about it as a competitive advantage, this is a huge competitive advantage. With much less money here, we were talking about, do you know how much make a developer with zero experience a year at Google? Like first job, he knows nothing, he's done nothing. Start at Google. Do you have any idea what is his yearly salary? Yes, 70,000. Okay, we say more. 50,000. Oh, it's 120,000. The guy's known nothing. He went to Stanford, right? He went to the best computer science school in the world. He knows nothing, goes to Google, he makes 120. Look at what we can do here. We were talking about this. Look at what we can do with 120.
Yeah, we can hire an army. Yeah.
Yeah, we can start hiring an army, and by the way, an army of people who are going to have the same quality of life of that guy who was making 120, was paying 35% of taxes, who pays $2,000 or $3,000 a month for the rent in San Francisco. I mean,
I think you cannot hear us because
No, but don't get me wrong. He's making 120, but he doesn't have a better life than we do here. So I think this is something we need. More money.
Yeah. So I hope that our country and UNIT.City will do the best on it, because we invest also a lot in education. I know you also success UCode program. And Dominique, thank you very much for coming. Thank you for this conversation. I really admire your experience, and I wish all the best to UNIT.City Kyiv and to UNIT.City Kharkiv. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Спасибо.